Hi, good evening. Thank you for coming out tonight. Allow me to introduce myself. I'm Dave Toddy. I'm the Director of Facilities for your school district here in Rochester. So you can see the agenda tonight. We've got a presentation, and then we'll hear comments from the public and collect those comments so that we can take that into consideration, everything anybody has to say about this project. We're here to talk about a new elementary school that's proposed to be built at 753 Salmon Falls Road. With us tonight, we have Gordon Leedy from Ty and Bond, and Mr. Leedy is a civil engineer with many years' experience, and his firm is going to be conducting all of this civil engineering. There's also Ingrid Nichols and Bradley Prescott from Banwell Architects, who are the architectural firm who will be designing the school. Myself and the superintendent are here. So with that, I'll just turn it over to Mr. Leedy. I'll get your
Thank you very much,
presentation
Dave.
up. And,
just a minor correction, although I've been interpreting for engineers for probably the last 25 years, I am a landscape architect and planner. So, but I do work for an engineering company. We are a local, come on in.
Yes, come on in.
We're a relatively local presence. Our office is at Pease, but our headquarters is in Westfield, Mass. We've been in business for 125 years, and so we're pleased, thrilled to be part of the program to develop a new, just forward that. Okay. All right. So we're here to talk about the what I don't exactly know what the name of it is going to be, but I'm calling it the Salmon Falls Elementary School. And this graphic just shows the locations of your existing schools. And this new elementary school is on Salmon Falls Road, out in the eastern section of town. That also is an area that is experiencing relatively robust growth. So it's a good place to save transportation costs and to provide a relatively local elementary school. This is a site plan with an aerial photograph of the property. It's about 40 acres. And as most of you probably know, the front section up towards Salmon Falls Road is about 12.2 acres. That is upland area and is not part of the wetland. There are wetland fingers that come up through the site. And so there's this one, which is relatively narrow, and then they sort of get wider and wider as you go back. So even though this is upland, and I suppose in some world it could be developed, we're not proposing to develop that back portion of the site because it's just too difficult to get to in terms of wetland impacts and so forth. The rest of the site, the front portion of the site, is relatively rolling topography and sort of slopes down in sort of a southwest direction or a southerly direction. There's not a huge amount of slope, but there's enough relief that we feel that we're in pretty good shape with regard to groundwater elevations. So you all probably know the site way better than I do, but these are some photographs that we took when we were out in the snow looking around. We have walked the site. We have done some preliminary test pits to sort of determine what the soils are like. We have this mapping is actually from a project or a proposal that was several years ago, but we've seen nothing on the site, and this had a delineation, wetland delineation done by a certified wetland scientist. We haven't seen anything out there that tells us that this information is vastly incorrect. I mean, the line might move around a little bit, but we are having it surveyed and redelineated as we speak. So, as I said, the existing site is 40.88 acres. It has 50 feet of frontage on Salmon Falls Road. It's got about 20 feet of relief across that property in front. The front upland area is 12.2 acres that is available for siting the school. It has utilities. There's good three-phase power out on Salmon Falls Road. There is no natural gas, which I suppose could be an issue, but we could, if it gets down to it, we can use propane if we absolutely need gas. City of Rochester water is available, and we've confirmed that there may be some pressure issues that we need to address in the final design of the building for fire pumps and so forth, but there is ample supply available of water. There also is sewer capacity available, sufficient capacity both at the plant, and they're upgrading the sewer pump station that is just across the street and up the road a little bit. So that's all been factored into the demand from this project has been factored into that design. So we feel like we're in pretty good shape there. Communications, Consolidated Communications has DSL lines in the area. I mean, they can provide internet by DSL. They also are rolling out fiber on a pretty aggressive schedule, so I would suspect that it probably is going to be in this neighborhood, especially if the city goes to Consolidated and says, hey, we're putting a school here, it sure would be nice if we had fiber. That's an ongoing expansion, and we feel that that's going to be an important part of this in terms of modern communications. So we are currently, I mentioned we're doing survey. We have a land surveyor out on site. Those of you in the neighborhood might have seen them out there. They are doing a topographic and boundary survey. We understand that there are potentially some issues with boundary, which we intend to resolve as a part of this project and this survey. We're also counting trips and traffic out on Salmon Falls Road, and we will do a full-blown traffic study to determine what, if any, improvements need to be made both at the intersection and if there's any other issues around in the general neighborhood. For those of you who may be interested, I kind of doubt that this would warrant a signal, but it probably will warrant improvements to the intersection. There is the potential of working with the neighbors across the street to provide them some upgraded access as well and have them participate in that. But that's something we're just very early days. We have done some preliminary soils investigations, not by any means any borings because it was kind of frozen when we were out there. And we don't really know in any great detail where the building foundation is going to be at this point, so that's what we kind of have to do before we do the detailed geotechnical investigation. But we did find that there was ample clearance between the ground surface and groundwater elevations, seasonal high groundwater elevations, which bode well for things like foundations and also for providing upgraded stormwater management systems. We have a certified wetland scientist, Gove Environmental Services, is going out to review the wetlands, delineate them, and determine functions and values for those wetlands in anticipation of some permitting activities that we'll talk about in a minute. And as I said, we've gotten preliminary readings from all the utility companies that say they can service this project. Stormwater is going to be a big concern, because it is a big concern. The water quality after you pursue development like this is important, and we have the best people on that. We have we believe in and will implement to the extent practicable low impact development techniques to manage stormwater and deal with that whole suite of issues. And then we also understand that we have neighbors, so landscape buffers are going to be important. As a landscape architect, and, you know, it's something that I incorporate into our design work on every project that we pursue. So we have taken the site program is a new elementary school of about 66,000 square feet. We need parking for 75 cars, which is staff and visitors. We anticipate having 8 to 10 buses at once, so we need to have a space for those buses to come and pick up kids and also to drop them off. We are planning for parent drop-off for up to 270 cars, and there are a variety of ways that we might be able to pursue that. I'll show you in a moment what our first pass at that. And then, but the real impetus for all of our activity is to sort of keep all of those vehicles on the site and not have them going out and creating mayhem in your neighborhood. And then we have play fields, so we have a 1.5 to 2.5 acre multi-use field, and then multiple age groups and hard surface areas for playground areas as well. So this is kind of one of the first passes, and this shows a 66,000 square foot school building. The parking is in the back, and the play fields are up toward the neighborhood. And so this does a couple of things. It allows us a maximum kind of loop road to take care of those 270 cars of queuing that we anticipate as a maximum queue. And then also kind of puts diminishes the intensity of the site use up against the neighbors. So this particular plan is a kind of a linear plan. We may have, there are certainly other ways that you can design buildings. This is another option that kind of consolidates that building footprint into a more sort of concise use of the site. We have the parking and buses in an L in front, and then again this loop of cars that could queue all the way around and pick up kids. Now, excuse me,
Gordon?
Yeah.
I see a lot of folks looking very carefully at the plan, and that's understandable. I just wanted to point out to them that the district has let us know that they're going to be posting all of this information on the website.
Oh, great.
So
Great.
it's not the only time you're going to see it. It'll be publicly accessible.
So, and I would add to that these are very preliminary plans. We have not designed this building, or they have not designed this building. We have not designed the site. We did this as a part of a kind of due diligence investigation to see how such a building and such a facility could lay out on the site, and to identify, you know, the key issues that we need to look into. And as I have said, wetlands are a key issue, soil conditions are a key issue, access is a key issue, and buffers to the neighborhood are key issues. So, you know, one option for providing that queuing space, since, well, modern schools, when I went to elementary school, you know, you walked to school or you took a bike to school. And unfortunately, that's not the way our schools work anymore. And so kids expect and parents expect to largely go and pick up and drop off their kids. And so what that means is that we will be pursuing a minor wetland impact here and here. It's about 8,000 square feet of total impact, so it's well below the minor permit threshold with New Hampshire DES. And that sole purpose of that is to provide access to this upland area where we can put a driveway and stack some cars if we need to. There may be, as we get into the details of the design, there may be some fallback positions. We may come up against some unknown issue with permitting, so we'll have to take that into account when we do the design. But this is our first pass at it. So that's really, I think that's, oh, okay. So in terms of the permits that we need to pursue, the state controls development largely. So we need a New Hampshire DES, what they call an alteration of terrain permit, which is if you disturb more than 100,000 square feet of contiguous area, you need to get an alteration of terrain permit. It's largely erosion control and stormwater management that is regulated by the state. New Hampshire DES wastewater discharge permit, which is basically kind of it's kind of a bookkeeping exercise by the state, because DES like to keep track of who's connecting to what, where, and to ensure that there's capacity at the plants. But they also, we're anticipating that we're going to have to do a sewer pump station somewhere. There is an access way here, and there is gravity sewer up in Ida Circle. So we will probably do a pump station on our property and then pump to the gravity sewer, and that way it gets to the big pump station out on Salmon Falls Road and goes on its merry way. So they'll review, DES will review the design of all of those things and sign off on it. And then, as I mentioned, we will be pursuing a minor standard dredge and fill permit from DES, which is wetlands. In terms of the local process, we will be having meetings like this. We will be consulting in great detail with the city departments and making sure that the regulations are followed to the extent that you know, if we need to do something, we have the commitment of the school district that they will do it. So in terms of the schedule, we're planning on having on using this year to do permitting and to do design, and we probably will be shooting to bid it as early in the spring as possible. Is that fair to say? So the district has selected a construction manager, so we'll have a construction manager on board. There also will be a project manager at the district, and you know, the architects and engineers will follow their lead and get done what needs to get done to get the project permitted and rolling forward. So, and then by the end of, what is it? End of 2025 is when this would be slated for completion. So we'll have all next year to build it, hopefully. And that's it. That's my presentation. So if you want me to put one of those plans back up, I can do that, and be happy to answer any questions you might have. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, you mentioned intersections 3 times in your opening.
Yep.
Are you talking about just where the school goes into the property off Salmon
No,
Falls? Or
I
are you
mean-
talking about Whitehall?
Typically, what happens is, when you have a project, you will have, likely have impacts at your entrance, right? At the main site access. There may be other places where there are impacts that are caused by this project. So we will look at, but first you have to have the numbers. So we'll do traffic counts in an area that the traffic engineers will determine, here are the likely places where we may or may not have impacts. We've already collected some data from the Public Works or the Stratford Regional Planning Commission, put some tubes out right before school closed. So we've got some school data which we can use to kind of calibrate things. But we'll be taking a look at the kind of, not regional, but the neighborhood kind of traffic
You
impacts.
must have seen some of those traffic numbers. And,
I haven't seen
oh,
it.
you haven't seen them,
No.
but somebody's seen them. And it's a very, very heavily traveled road because it's an that goes from
Yes.
north of Rochester to Somersworth.
I understand.
And
But,
so,
I mean,
and there's no sidewalks, so
No
are we gonna have to purchase land to put sidewalks in?
I haven't, we really haven't looked at that yet. So as I said,
Does that all come from a traffic study?
it can, yeah. But, I mean, as we know, sidewalks are a citywide issue, right? So I don't know whether the city has
Not on a road
plans
where
for.
they're going 45 miles an hour.
Yeah.
Closer to 20.
Yes, ma'am.
I live at Tara Estates. Can you
Yeah.
show me where Eagle Drive is on that map?
Eagle Drive is right up here.
Okay, the ownership of the park has just changed in the last couple of months.
Right.
And they had permits for 100 houses, which they're going to continue. There are huge, huge trucks coming from the south that come through the park and then do stuff in there. Right now, we only still have one entrance onto Salmon Falls Road. There's been talk that we need, or someday we'll have another one. And since we are right at the northern end of our property, it would have to be on the southern end of something, which could end up right opposite this school. So we've got 350 houses roughly in there now. You add another 100, you're adding 150, 200 more cars, and potentially coming out there. That is a curve. This morning I pulled out to head south and I was behind a garbage truck.
Oh, on Eagle Drive?
Yes,
Yeah.
onto Salmon Falls. And I had to wait for them to pick up the trash for 2, 3, 4 houses before I had enough visibility that I could go around them.
Yeah.
So that the visibility is not good. And I'm just thinking, if you have that many more people going in and out of Eagle Drive, which is all we have right now, you could have a backup with these 270 cars going in at 2 or 3 o'clock whenever school lets out. We could never head south. It would be backed
There's a
up.
backup now every morning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
an older community as well.
There's no children.
Right, no kids there.
Is there any chance that you could have an exit over to Whitehall Road from there?
I'm not sure I understand where Whitehall Road is. Is it on the other side?
It's down on the left-hand side of where you are
Over
now,
No,
the one the hospital is on. Is
Yeah,
there
there
any
is,
property there
South-
available that
south
you
of
cut a
the
road
property.
through?
yeah, there,
Too much wetland.
that would wetlands.
my take on it is that there would be a slim chance of getting crossings approved across all of this. So, I mean, you may be able to do something with a boardwalk or something like that, but you're not getting a
Not a
road.
driveway.
Right.
Because I also live in Tara Estates, and the traffic, trying to get out of there, the traffic is atrocious. You get it in the rush hour, always a backup down there at the stop sign in Portland. And cars are not traveling 35 miles an hour on that
Right.
corner, they're going 45, sometimes 50.
Yes, ma'am.
Do Do you have a study of how many children actually live in that area? There aren't, there's, Terror Estates has no children. I live on it, there are very few. I am not kidding you, the school bus does not stop. There's hardly any people on that end of Salmon Falls Road that have children that would be going there. There's also, they only put in some new houses just where that water,
Right.
where it would connect to.
Right.
Those are the only new houses in there. There are a couple that run off a little further up off Coxsole property and,
Smoke Street.
yeah, a couple of those little ones, and I'm sure there are some children there. But again, there's no sidewalks. How many children are going to be going there that live in that neighborhood?
So we're gonna have to rezone our entire city. So right now, all of our elementary schools are zoned by the
Okay.
area of the school. So when we close 2 schools to build the new school, we're gonna have to redraw lines. So if you think about it, we're closing 2 elementary schools and getting rid of 5 modular classrooms.
Right, that aren't in that neighborhood. That
Well,
don't live
the
in-
Chamberlain area is, that's that neighborhood. So they have modulars at that school that we're gonna be getting rid of. So we're gonna have to work with the city to redraw lines that will essentially move children from the inner side of the city further out to East Rochester, Chamberlain, and the new school. So new lines will be
Be
drawn.
more buses.
Well, busing, does
No,
Chamberlain
the
Street
buses,
own?
the buses you saw, that includes the study that we did.
And then does that get the special ed buses? But my other question is, someone had said that, and I haven't looked it up, does the town own more property by the Chamberlain Street School that could be developed?
The town owns the entire lot behind Chamberlain Street School.
Okay, I don't know, and I don't know the wetland. I know that there's, from having lived on Adams Avenue
let me answer
1,000 years ago, there is a little stream that
There
does
is.
go.
So you've seen the amount of blue shown in this?
Yes.
Chamberlain is entirely blue.
Okay,
It's
okay.
completely considered wetland.
Okay.
You cannot build out
Thank you
there.
for
There were
answering
actually,
that.
there were actually drawings made of, there was a second school to be built out behind the existing Chamberlain Street. Those drawings were made sometime in the 80s. And then, with more lenient wetland concerns, it was not a feasible project.
Thank you for answering that. Thank you.
Absolutely.
So I'm directly, as are my neighbors, in Ida Circle, so that's the
Okay.
subdivision.
Yep.
okay? So I see you have a loop for 270 cars and 10 buses. But every one of those 270 cars need to come off of Salmon Falls Road somewhere before they get into that loop. So you're still gonna have a queue up and down Salmon Falls Road to turn left or right. Depends on who's turning, you're probably gonna have multiple crashes, but that's a different subject. So there's a proposed there's a paper right-of-way through Ida Circle and to that area. I'll tell you right now, none of us in a new subdivision want this kind of traffic coming through our new subdivision that's not built to handle that kind of traffic. We know the builders, we've seen their crummy work, and you have to entirely reconstruct that entire area for one, the fear of a bus diving into a deep ditch. So we don't want that. We want to be able to get out of our driveway at 8 o'clock in the morning and 3 o'clock in the afternoon. We don't want to be backed up in traffic, have to wait for Susie and Mary and Janie to drop off their kids or get in the loop queue. So that's our biggest
Understood.
concern.
Understood. There
the
are no
neighborhood.
plans at this point to use that as a regular vehicular access.
And would there be a crash gate put there for emergency
Well,
access?
yeah, we can figure that out. We probably should do that. I mean, the fire department would like to see that. As I said earlier, we would like to put a force main up that right of way.
Well, that would be Barry, I'm assuming, right?
Absolutely.
Grass over
Yeah,
top of it or whatever.
Or maybe it's gravel or whatever. I mean, it's sort of gravel now. If you're gonna use it for emergency access, it would need to have
Gravel.
some kind of surface on it, right? But there are no plans to use that as a second access, if you will, to the school site.
Until there's an accident.
Or another death.
Until there's an accident or somebody dies.
They have had them there.
Then our neighborhood's gonna be the rescue path.
let's do this, just so everyone, because this young lady over here has been waiting patiently. So if you raise your hand, what I'll do is I'll just kind of give you a point that you're gonna be next, and that way everyone gets a chance to speak. So ma'am, I believe you're next.
Yep. So I have a number of concerns with this proposal, and some of them have already been spoken about. But I think that what I'd like to mention is that this parcel only has 50 feet of frontage, which by most standards make it an undevelopable parcel. Somehow the city bought this piece of land thinking they were gonna turn it into a location to bring kids in. So now we're talking about 50 feet where that's all the traffic is gonna go through that 150-foot section. To me, that's not safe, that's bad planning. I don't see how this is a good project for this site. In addition, I have a lot of concerns with the water levels around this area. You did point out the wetlands, but I will also tell you that if you walk the development of Ida Circle, you will see a lot of water around those houses. And they had a hard time dealing with the water that was there. I cannot imagine putting in a 66,000 square foot building and all of that impervious cover on top of that land. It's just not designed to handle that type of development. And I also think that your growth numbers, you said that one of the reasons why you chose this location was because of projected growth, is skewed because what you're looking at is the 55 plus community. That is the only place where there's growth happening on Salmon Falls. It's at Terra Estates, and they do not have children because it's 55 plus. And I don't think that the numbers that you were looking at took that into consideration.
Thank you.
I agree with everybody's comments here. What has not been brought up is emergency vehicles. Right now, Salmon Falls is one lane each way with quite a ditch on either side. We've got a hospital 3 miles away exactly from the end of Tara. And there's a lot of in and out of Tara and emergency vehicles. And now we're going to add another 100 and some houses in there. There's almost no visibility. Suppose at 2:30 in the afternoon, there's literally 100 cars lined up waiting to go in there. There's an emergency on Ida here. No ambulance can get in and out of there. No ambulance can get in and out of Tara. And how are they going to get from Tara to the hospital? There is just no room in 2 lanes for emergency vehicles. Those of us that live in Tara, every now and then the subject comes up. We need a second exit. But right now with one, you're going to have one exit. Suppose you have an emergency out on your field. How are you going to get through? How many lanes are going to go in those 50 feet into your school?
You can get at least 3 lanes into 50 feet pretty easily.
Yeah.
50 feet, for what it's worth, is a standard right-of-way width for a public street in New Hampshire. So, I mean, the ditches are a concern, but I mean, maybe we have to put some sewer lines in, you know, some storm sewer in.
I mean, it's one thing on a straightaway, but there's a massive curve there.
I
Nobody
understand.
can see anything, and how are emergency going to come and go? And now you've got all these big trucks. So suppose at 2 o'clock, we've got giant sand trucks. These things are enormous, with huge tires. And we have an ambulance, and we've got 100 and some cars trying to go in and out, pick up their kids on a horrible, rainy, snowy day. I just can't see it at that location.
No turning lanes, very deep
Well-
culverts on either side.
Yeah. I mean, we'll let the traffic engineers figure out what lane geometry really needs to be accomplished, but, you know, typically you can do that you can do what you need to do within a 50-foot right of way. So, I mean, I'm talking about Salmon Falls is probably a 50 to maybe 60-foot right.
What about a slow-down lane as you approach the 50 feet?
All of that will be considered.
You're going to have to take some people's front yards, both
Not
sides.
Not necessarily.
No?
Yes.
I mean, we're surveying it now, so we don't really have the full answer on that, but typically, as I said, 50, 60 feet is a standard right-of-way width in New Hampshire.
I just also want to make a point too, this is not the only public forum that we're holding, and this is an iterative process.
Yeah.
So as you bring up concerns, I'm writing down all of your concerns. Obviously, they haven't completed the traffic study. Once they do, that would then come to a public forum and be shared. And again, as we fine tune things, we're going to keep you abreast of all of that. So we are listening, and we will also come back with more answers.
Yeah. And also, I mean, we're developing a kind of library of information, right? That is going to inform the design work that has to happen. So,
How many children are we talking about in this school? You haven't said that.
420.
many?
420.
You're closing 2 and putting them all here, and probably the worst curve in the city. I know it's not an engineer's decision, it's city political, which I'm a new resident, I don't really understand all of that, but I don't think this is the right item at the right place.
Where are you getting 420 kids from School Street and the annex?
No, so it's School Street and Nancy Loud, right? It's Nancy Loud School. You're welcome, Andre.
No,
Yep.
I don't call it
Yep.
that.
That's a memorial.
But it's 5 modular, we can't forget about the 5 modulars that I used to ride my bike around.
Okay.
Okay, so there's 5 modular classrooms, 2 at William Allen, 3 at Chamberlain that are also closing.
I thought those left a long time ago.
No, they're still there and they're dilapidated and falling apart. Yeah.
Thank you.
You and then you next, okay? Yep, ma'am?
Okay, my name's Kathy Baker, and I'm one of the abutters. I'm curious, first of all, where the entrance is?
Is it right next to your driveway? Yeah.
That's where that
Where-
sign was.
I'm sorry.
The water lines.
Are you,
I'm
what's your name again?
Kathy Baker, 749 Salmon Falls Road.
Here, it is right next to your property.
Yeah, do you know that where my property ends, it's right at my driveway? I want you to know that that property was owned by a lady named Lorraine Whaley, who served our country in World War II. I actually went with her on a flight to Washington, D.C. She was a really great lady. She never had any kids, and she loved that land. And she always told me to trust her. She goes, Kathy, trust me. Things are going to be good. She actually left it to her attorney, and he's the one that sold it to the city. She just would be just so heartbroken because he had it surveyed when she sold it. Well, he had it surveyed when she deeded it to him. And he surveyed it with 2 lots on it, and I think you would see that if you looked at it. And because he told her he was going to retire there and have 2 houses built. So that's what he told this lady, and it's just, she wouldn't like it. So if you do build the school, you should call it Whaley School or something like that to honor this woman who served our country. Not that I'm totally for it. I love kids. I had 6 kids, but there's some issues. We all know that with Salmon Falls Road, and I actually have this right here that I printed out. It's an article from 2009 from Foster's where the city said it was going to, sure, and I've got some more copies. The city said it was going to fix the road and fix gaps in the road where the water and sewer were lacking, which would have encompassed our home and homes down the road from us as well. So in the last 3 years, 2 of my neighbors have actually had to redo their septics. I mean, a major cost to do that. I don't know how long ours is going to last. I know the house across the street also is, they're old houses. So this was 2009 when they said they were going to do this.
So you're on, just so I understand, you're on private sewer? You don't have city sewer?
No, we have septic.
Okay.
Septic.
So is that's everyone down
Everybody from the
toward,
corner.
everyone down toward Ira?
Corner to
Beach?
Whitehall.
Yeah, okay,
Yep. So they did, and so that's where you're going to link in, is at Ida Circle.
right.
And I went and spoke when they did Ida Circle, and I said, I just want to tell you, we used to have a pony years and years ago, and when our pony died, it was allowed, so we buried our pony on our property, and this was in January. And when they came and dug the hole in January, the hole was filling with water. That's how high the water table is. So it's funny how the land does slope, but it's still, very wet.
It's
If you-
tilt, it's glacial tilt, which is kind of the bane of the seacoast.
If you look at our barn, you can see that it's sinking. Our barn is sinking. It's been there for many years, and it was originally moved from across the river, but, you know, here it is, and it's sinking, the four corners. The only posts that are stable are in the middle because they're on a slab. So, and this is, I can't imagine what's gonna happen on Ice Circle. I really am worried for you guys because this, it's.
Can you say for sale?
Yeah. I hope you're not having issues, but.
We already have issues.
So they already have issues. My sump pump runs year-round. My neighbor's pump is running year-round. Our basement's flood. 2 pumps she has
When they
going.
put in Ida Smith,
So
I
the
had more
land,
water.
so the land may slope back towards
What do you
where
think's
the
gonna happen when they
wetlands
go
are, but it
school for
also
this?
drains forward.
Well, we
I'm
will,
gonna have my kayak and my.
we will fully address those issues. And, I mean, we like to do infiltration where we can, but we don't have the soils information to determine whether that's something that we can do or not. So if we can't do infiltration, we'll do stormwater basins and have, you know, collect it and meter it out as it goes, so that we don't increase the amount of
So the only place you can do those stormwater things are in the back area, right, where the wetlands are? So that's gonna encroach on what your square footage is available for parking and.
we're showing stormwater, the city has a 50-foot setback from wetlands. So we're showing stormwater management systems outside of that 50 feet. So we believe there's plenty of space to do what we need to do. Now, some of this, you know, it may involve advanced techniques to do, you know, you can do stormwater management, water quality treatment without having to actually go into the soil. So you can, you know, right now, water's flowing across this site and is flowing into this wetland area at a certain, you know, rate.
But it also flows down towards the road. It goes both ways.
Yeah, I understand, but I mean, we're gonna do
Most of
advanced,
Yeah, I know.
we're
Okay.
gonna do advanced systems to take care of the groundwater.
Another
And
point
that also means putting under drains in, under foundations, putting under drains in where you have to, under parking lots. I mean, there are certainly engineering ways that we can deal with that.
Because you are talking about a lot of pavement and roof space
Yep.
that it's gonna have to deal with. There's a man who lives, and I don't even know if he knows what's going on, but he lives down the road from me, and he lives way off the road. And I'm just wondering how this has impacted him. I actually walk those woods, I ski those woods in the wintertime. It's the only time you can go way in is in the wintertime, because it freezes, but it actually doesn't even freeze until like late winter. It takes that long for all that back there to freeze. And the way you have your lines isn't quite accurate because, as far as the wetlands, because they connect. There's like a swath that goes from one to the other, almost like a U. It's a lot. It's a lot. And
Well,
that's-
as I said, we're in the process of understanding what that is, and we'll deal with that as it.
Another point is that I would hope that you guys would take, if you do build the school, that you would make trails and use that land for the public's benefit, because it's incredible back there. But the other impact is gonna be on the wildlife back there too, because they are there. There's a lot of deer back there.
Yeah.
So, I have more, but, and the turning lane on the main road, I think that's gonna be a big deal. We have accidents right beside our house. We've had our mailbox taken out this year. My neighbor's had his mailbox taken out. I mean, it's definitely a big issue,
Yeah.
big
Yeah.
issue.
Maybe you were next, right here.
I was just wondering if there were any other parcels in town that were considered before this was decided on by the city.
Yeah, for the last 2 years, Mr. Toddy and I worked with the city manager to review all available city parcels. I guess a sad fact that I have to report is that most of the city properties that are available are underwater. And that's why there's city properties that are unbuildable and they're still there. It's because all of the developable land has been developed. There is a second site that was in 1 and 2, like when we went to the council, which is on the Gonic side of town. And we've asked them to kind of hopefully keep some of that land for future use, because unfortunately we do have several schools approaching 100 years or more in lifespan. So for equity purposes, we would need to develop another school probably within the next 5 to 10 years. Ma'am, then sir.
Aside from the city manager, who else did you consult with?
Pardon?
Aside from the city manager, who else did you consult with when you were considering parcels?
Yeah, there was a public RFP that we put out to the entire community. So we sent that out through our public relations firm. And we also use the GIS mapping in town that shows all of the land that's by tax deed.
Right, but you didn't actually you didn't talk with the planning department or DPW or?
That's the city manager, yes, and he did, yes. So I think it was ma'am and then sir.
Have you done a topographical map of, let's say, the 12 acres you're planning on building on?
That's what we're doing as we speak.
What is the average difference in height from the highest to the lowest within that 12 acres?
We haven't completed it yet, but the preliminary information was that the elevation in the northeast corner is 328 and 308 at the southwest corner, so roughly 20 feet.
Okay, because you said that parking lots and whatever can have drainage under them. And I'm just saying, where is the low spot on this entire 40 acres? Where can it go?
Yeah, the low, well, we're not developing the whole 40 acres.
Right.
We're developing the 12 acres at the front, right? So, and the low spot is right down here.
Yeah. All right, there are some apartments, I want to say White Cliff, but I don't remember the exact names of them in Dover, which are now 20 or 30 years old, on the road that goes from Dover to Durham, not the 108, but the other road. And they had some, last night I got woken up at 3 a.m. with an enormous thunderstorm right overhead and water everywhere. That the water got up to the point that it was coming over the foundations of some of those houses. There was no place for it to go. So if you've only got 20 feet, and I don't know how it's all going to be laid out and graded, you have almost no place for a 100-year flood or whatever to go.
That's part of what we're trying to determine right now.
And right now, there's a big muddy mess to the right of the entrance to Tara. And I understand that the city owns that piece, although I may be wrong, and that they're redoing the pump
that's where
for
the
the
pump
100
station
new
is.
houses. Now, are you trying to tap into what's being done for Tara?
That is a municipal pump station, sewer pump station. It doesn't just handle Terra Estates, it handles Ida Circle and other, you know. So, and we've had discussions with the sewer department, and they've assured us that, you know, we gave them some preliminary flow estimates from this facility, and they've assured us that they are designing the new pump station to accommodate that flow.
So, nobody's talked about the big elephant in the room. We talk about advanced engineering and advanced this, advanced that. I see dollar signs, dollar signs, dollar signs. The budget for this project is $33 million. We get $15 million from the state, $5 million short of what they anticipated. So there's an $18 million gap there to start with. With all of these advanced engineering proposals, we're probably talking $50 million. So where's the money coming from that the state's not giving us? It's going to come from my pocket. It's coming from these folks' pocket. And if you live in Rochester, it's coming from your pocket too. Now, there's a cost savings to a new school because I understand the other schools are dilapidated and they have a lot of maintenance costs. But let me tell you, once the government says your tax rate is this, it never goes to that. It stays here, and if there's extra money anywhere, they find someplace else to spend it. So in the recent budget, they said, oh, it's going to be $1.95, but we got that cut down to 82 cents per thousand. they'll tell us that was a tax cut, but it was a tax increase of 82 cents per thousand for everyone here. So another 18 million is gonna be how much per thousand for everyone here? And that doesn't include the cost overruns and the extra infrastructure that's not included in the specific budget. That's the city's property, like the sidewalks and the drainage and the reconstruction of Salmon Falls Road and all those multi-millions of dollars. So this project's gonna turn into a $50 million project, mark my words.
I just wanna,
No, you're concerned.
okay, I just wanna say, I'm at 727, right on the corner. I have quite a bit of traffic coming in and out of my driveway, and it is a suicide zone trying to get out of my driveway. I'm in the blind driveway there. And you look, and you make a decision, and you go, and they come flying around that corner. Just 2 weeks ago, somebody came the opposite direction, came across the center line, took out Bob and mine's mailbox, which is the next house over. I'm 2 houses down from Kathy, on the curve, second driveway on the right after tower. Yeah, it's crazy. And when I go out in the morning to go to my job, I drive special needs bus right now. I'll be driving in Rochester this summer. When I leave in the morning, that's 35 miles an hour. I go no more than 40, and they're passing me on the double yellow line at 40 miles an hour. They're not going 45. They're going 50. They're going 60 in some cases. And also, when they built that circle, that new houses, I got more water in my cellar. So when that comes in, we're gonna get more water. It all comes down. And I got 2 sump pumps running. Yeah, you're right.
When you consulted and you were talking about the growth being targeted into the Salmon Falls area for the population, did you happen to actually look at any of the maps that comes from, like, the Conservation Commission? Because I sit on the Conservation Commission, and currently we have almost a complete run all the way from the Somersworth line to East Rochester, right along the river area, where there will be absolutely no building.
I think something that Gordon said is being misinterpreted. It's not just streets like immediately around the school.
I'm talking houses.
No, I understand, sir, but all of the east side is a burgeoning section of our town. And so when we looked at the maps, and you can do it tonight, if you go to the city's website and you see on the GIS overlay, you can look at current buildings under construction, which is one color, I believe that's green. And the purple houses, or purple little dots, are proposed subdivisions and or homes. And there are many, many, many dots. Okay, the east and west side have really strong pockets of growth. And so when we close these other schools, it's not just right around the school. It's all of the east side and some of the overflow from the internal schools in the city that are gonna push out. As I said, we're gonna have to redraw the lines.
Now, the other part of this question that I have for you is, you are going to close some of the schools. What are you going to do with the property that those schools are on?
That's city property, so when there's an RSA that requires us, when we are given the land from the city, that we then give it back when it's not an essential purpose.
What I'm proposing is if you tear down a building, you put a building back in place of it, you will have a new school and you already have the property there and you have dry land because you already have built on it.
Unfortunately, the 2 sites that we're closing cannot accommodate the size school that we need. Here and then there.
I apologize, I have not followed this at all, and I'm only here because I've had so many people ask me what's going on. So is it too late to look at other properties?
the city has purchased this land, I couldn't force them to execute a school on it, but I also can't get them to buy another parcel of land in the time that we need it. So we're number one in building aid, and so if we don't have all of our ducks in a row, which part of it is land, we would lose our space and we would give all that money back to the state. So it's potentially an option, right?
I'm just thinking, this is the first time I've really heard about this proposal, and it seems like it's coming with a lot of issues. And so I just wonder if there might be another site that would be more conducive for the safety of children.
It is gonna have a lot of issues, there's just no doubt about it, you're gonna have a lot to work with. And if you think about the precipitation we've had in the last couple of years, I believe it's down. So that when you did your digs and you did your study, I just don't know how accurate it was. You're gonna go out there and you're gonna be in a mud hole. It's gonna be something. I just want it, it's fair warning, you know?
So as the superintendent said, and I took it, tell me if I took this wrong. It seems to me like the state, we've been on the list for a long time to get a new school. And the state said, oh, we're gonna give you $15 million for a new school. And somebody, the city or the superintendent or the school board or somebody said, oh crap, we don't have any land. Let's go buy some land. Where's their land for sale? Oh, here's a piece of property that was for sale for $450,000 for like 5 years, but nobody wants it, nobody could buy it. All this development going on around, nobody could develop it, nobody wanted it. So the school said, oh, we'll give you $250 for it, and then whoever owns it said, oh, deal. We don't care, we got our money, cool. So now now the city has money for the school, we can get the state aid, so let's shove this school on this bad location, because if we don't, it might be another 10 years before we get a school, before we get on the list again. So it's kind of a catch-22 or 26 or whatever you want to call it. We need land, if we don't have land, we don't get money, so here's land so we can get this money. Am I wrong, Mr. Superintendent?
So respectfully, yeah, you're very wrong.
Okay.
So let me tell you exactly what we've been doing, and I believe in being open and transparent. We have public meetings that happen first, second, and third Thursday of every month. I'm going into my 5th year as a superintendent, 8th year in the district. My predecessor was talking about the need for schools my very first year here in the district. So this has been a well-discussed topic in our community. As I discussed, our planning board, or our building committee, for the last 2 years has held meetings, and you can go and watch all the videos, seeing all the GIS maps that we have been looking at, knowing that we have buildings in disrepair. And so we have been talking about this for a long time. I'm sorry if you feel we haven't been, but we have, and all of the tapes are out there. This is not a hurry up and we just want land. It's not the case. We've been looking for, like I said, for 2 years. The building aid process is a very transparent process. You can go to the DOE's website, type in building aid. There's a schedule of dates and executable actions that need to take place a year before they even execute the award of the funds. We haven't been given the funds yet. But a year ago, I believe it was July 7th last year, Mr. Toddy and I needed to execute a 40-page document to give to the city, or to the state, to say we meet requirements, or we think we meet requirements. That was used by the state. They came out to look at all of our sites, and yes, during that time we were looking for land. Again, not sure if people look at the websites and things, and we use press releases. And again, I want to make sure you understand, we didn't just look at what the city gave us. We sent out an RFP, we put it out in Foster's, we put it out everywhere to say, if you have land that would be suitable for a school, please send it to us. And we did get about 8 or 10 people that sent in private land that was owned. But again, we had already looked at those tax maps and saw that they were underwater. This was a parcel of land that went on the market in the time period that RFP was executed. And it was assessed by the city to be, again, suitable because we needed between 8 and 10 acres to create a school of this size. So, Mr. Toddy, feel free.
Yeah, and if I could just jump on it. So, not all the properties that were submitted were underwater. Some of them were too small, some of them were too far off of the existing grid to be, you'd have to run electric for 2 miles or put in 3 miles of paved road to access the site. So there were a lot of reasons. And I personally walked all of the sites that came in. I personally walked all the sites that were given by the city. I got Lyme disease a year and a half ago while I was out picking up ticks, walking property. So the characterization that we just all of a sudden said we need land is, it's not quite right. We've been really working this hard. We've been reaching out to the public. We've reached out to real estate agents. We've put a lot of time and effort into this. This isn't just, oh, hey, there's one, let's buy it, right? There's been a lot of discussion. As Mr. Rapuzzi said, he's been here 8 years. Well, I've been here 10 years. And the number one priority of the school board when I was hired was to close the modulars. And that's what we're doing. That's what this project is. This discussion is over 10 years old. Modular classrooms were put into the district as a stopgap measure about 31 years ago. As a stopgap, a temporary fix, 31 years ago. Or, I don't have the exact date, one thing went off the top of my head, but the superintendent said when he was a little boy, he used to ride his bike to them. That's how long they've been around. That's how long we've been having this need. And the need was also evaluated by Department of Education. Department of Education is just to walk in and give you $18 million without any conversation. They toured all of our schools that would be affected. They looked at the facilities, the infrastructure. Is this school, is it viable? Can it continue to serve into the future? And then they look at the population, and then they look at the new home starts. They do the whole thing and figure out, Rochester, you have a need of X. And our need, X, calculated at the state level, rose to the top of everyone in the state that applied. Think about that for a second. Our need in Rochester rose to the top of everyone in the state that applied. That's a dubious distinction, right? It's not a great thing to be at the top of that list. It means our infrastructure is the worst of anyone in the state that applied for building aid. They looked at everything and said, no, Rochester, you guys, here's the money. We got to do this project. And it's been years coming. I toured Nancy Loud School with city councilors probably 5 years ago when funds were being removed from the budget to repair the school because we were talking about, you can't put money into this building, we need to build a new school. It's not a new conversation by any stretch.
Well, thank you both. You're very, very well, prepared. So you're very intelligent on that. So I'm new to the area, so I've been here 1 year, and it's in my backyard. That's why I'm interested. I appreciate your efforts over the years. I know the wheels of government turn very slowly, but based on your statement, that's how it kind of sounded to me. So that's why I took it that way. So thank you for your thorough explanation. I appreciate it.
Can I just add one thing, Kyle?
Sure.
Paul Callahan. When I was elected mayor in 2021, we actually had a meeting in the late fall of 2021. And not only did we give them every GIS map we have for city land, it was actually land that they liked, and we reached out to those folks, see if they're willing to sell it. So there's been a lot of work that's gone in on this.
Yeah, so just a couple of things. I don't think most people I know agree that we do need a new school. I don't think that is, anybody here is saying that we don't need a new school. Just that this location is problematic. And, I regret not going to city council when this was up for a vote. I thought there was no way it was going to pass because it was a ludicrous idea to use this parcel. I could not fathom that they would not go to planning board and not talk to the planning department. I know you said the city manager, but the city manager I don't think represents well everything that maybe the planning department is aware of, or where the growth is really happening. So I think there were some key pieces that were missed. And I really wish that there was, those key people within city staff were engaged with on this particular project. And I really hope that moving forward that does happen, because I think there could have been alternatives that were looked at you know, because I thought city council would not approve of this. I didn't go to that meeting, so now I'm coming to these meetings because I need to voice my, you know, concerns about this development.
I was wondering if there was any feasibility in adding on to that school down on Portland Street. It looks to me like there's plenty of room around it where an addition on the side or the back could be done without too much of a problem. And you've already got your facilities there. You've got your heating system that you could probably tie into without any problem and be half the cost of a brand new school.
So to add 420 students to the East Rochester facility it just won't accommodate on the locus. Now, when that building was designed and built, I think there was a possibility of adding 4 classrooms to it. We're talking about adding 420 students worth of classrooms. It couldn't get attached to the existing building. Just like the wetland at Chamberlain, when you overlay the wetland map onto the East Rochester 773 Portland Street, you can do this tonight on the city's GIS. It's a great website. It's very useful. You can drop the wetland right on that, and you'll see that it's right at the edge of pavement. And that entire, that's another huge piece of property. There's 75 acres out there. That's all underwater. And there's an adjacent property that was on the market, same problem. It's all wetland when you move out there.
You're trying to build a big school to solve all your problems, and you're trying to put it in a poor location. What I'm just wondering, if you totally rethought all the properties and schools that we have, you said, I'm not familiar, I'm from Dover, I'm not really familiar with the Rochester schools, but if you took the square footage of existing schools which you want to close, how about if you took your good architectural minds and totally rethought what is the absolute best purpose for this land? How many classrooms, how many parking places? Forget what's there, just go by the lot lines, and then do that on each of your school properties. And you just said you had 8 or 10 properties, most of which were too wet or too small. But if you rethought existing properties and did it stage by stage, you could do one at a time, and maybe one of these slightly smaller ones won't hold 440 people, but it may hold 200. And you could redo the existing properties, you've got everything set up, sidewalks, whatever, neighborhoods and so on, and then maybe do something smaller, and then you can stage it so that it doesn't hit the taxes all at once, and just totally rethink what you're doing. This one huge 440 schools, number one, it's a bad location, and number two, just because now you can wipe out old modular rooms and this and that, doesn't mean that you're really using existing property. Apparently, a property for the city to buy and use is very short supply. Let's rethink the use of what we have.
And you know what, it's a great thought, and it was actually something that was done 8 years ago by our entire school board and my predecessor. He came to a meeting, which is again available on our websites, that he literally had our architect at the time, who was a different architect, show what could happen in each of the schools and what could not happen. So for example, Chamberlain, there's a 50-foot setback from all wetlands. We're on it. There's no feasible way to grow Chamberlain Street School, right? So, but when you go up, you've seen traffic there too, right? And so there's many issues with all of the issues. So our board looked at all of the designs that it would take to expand School Street, to do different things. And again, the feasibility of those was not acceptable, and again, it wasn't meeting the need to get rid of modulars and close schools. And as Mr. Toddy said, the dubious distinction, and it's sad to say, that the reason we're first on the list is because we have schools that we shouldn't have students in. And from a person that believes in equity for all of our children, to have students in certain buildings that other students reap the benefits of newer technologies and different types of foundations. And so we need to get in our city to a place of equity, and that's what part of this project is about. Nobody should be in a modular classroom, right? So that's what we're working towards. And it is something that the board did consider many, many years ago.
I think it's time
Ma'am,
to
right back
redo
there.
it.
This planned school, in my opinion, is just not safe where you're wanting to put it. My mother and father live about 4 houses up from Tara. I've lived 47 years a little further down on Salmon Falls Road, 1042. And I'm a retired school teacher, so every morning, all that GE, because I taught a little further north up in Wakefield, and all that traffic, there's Navy Yard, there's GE, there's Pratt and Whitney, and it goes by our house all day. The traffic, they've done some traffic signs out there to take in information, you know, the police department did during COVID actually, because they were just speeding by at over 55 miles an hour. Now, I was over at my friend's house that abuts this property the other day when the survey crew was out there. That corner, there have been, I believe, 2 deaths on there since, and I'm a lifetime Rochester resident, 2 deaths on that corner since I've lived on Salmon Falls Road. But in saying that, I was over at my friend's house, come out, and the survey people are there. And I said, oh, well, I said, you know, wow, this corner is bad. He said, yeah. I said, they're looking to put a school there, he said. Oh, really? And rolled his eyes. And the same with the other woman that was doing the survey with him. She said, they're really thinking of putting a school there? That's your survey group. Thank you.
And just think, would you want the entrance to the school next to your house? I love kids. I love kids. But that's always been a sanctuary for me. We actually run a residential care facility. We take care of elderly people. We've been there for over 30 years. When we moved to Rochester, we had 1 little girl. We had 12 people that live with us. We've done this for 30 years. All my kids are grown. I watch my grandchildren now, and they're part of the Rochester school system. I love the Rochester school system, and I want the kids to be safe. And I understand they're not safe in those modular classrooms, but I don't get vacations. I go out in the woods and that's my sanctuary. And I'm not saying I want it all to myself. I would love for the public to have it, but I don't take vacations. That's my sanctuary out there. And you're talking about putting, it's a lot of traffic, and it's a lot of unrest. We also have a big black German Shepherd that's gonna bark at every car that goes by.
A lot of them like to play.
And she's got golden retrievers, so, you know, it's gonna definitely, change it's gonna have a major impact.
Sir. I just like to make a couple of statements. I'm new to Rochester, and when this thing started, a couple of the neighbors we were talking to said that years ago, they tried to build something on this land, and the Army Corps engineer turned it down and says it was unbuildable. Now, all of a sudden, it's buildable. And so if the Army Corps engineer refused this land years ago to put something on there, why is it buildable now?
Because it depends very much on the kind of project you're talking about. Because, for example, if you wanted to...
They want to put a mobile homes there.
Okay, so that would perhaps create, it depends on how much wetland impact they were talking about.
There was only 12 acres they could use out of that whole lot.
Right, that's what we're using.
So can I go ahead?
And the other thing, and I know, I live on Ida, and I see the people in Tara. And a couple of weeks ago, I was stuck on Portland Street, making a turn on Portland Street to go on Salmon. And I was behind a school bus, dropping off kids. From Portland Street to Ida Circle, which is probably half a mile, it took me a half hour, because I was stuck behind a school bus. You're talking about a small road here. And you're talking about The last meeting I went, we came to, they says, oh, the city's not gonna buy people that take land by domain on Salmon to put sidewalks because there's gonna be a school there. Really? Okay? So if you're talking about from Portland Street to Ida Circle, taking a half hour because I'm stuck behind a school bus, what's gonna happen when there's a school there? What do you have to get up 2 hours? It's gonna be like downtown Boston to go from Ida Circle to Home Depot. It's gonna take me 2 days. And supposedly, there's 35 feet, you need 50 feet on Salmon Falls Road. The last meeting, we said to somebody, excuse me, where you getting the other 15 feet? Oh, we can squeeze that in. Squeeze what? We're not gonna worry about the gullies, we're not gonna build sidewalks, really? Come on, I mean, enough bullshit. That's what we've been getting for the last 2 or 3 months for all these meetings we go to City Hall, we go to other meetings, and we go, oh no, this is not a done deal. Oh, this is a done deal. You know that, I know that, everybody here knows that. So don't tell people, oh, we're looking at other options. This is a done deal.
So,
you know it.
well, just real quick, sir, I don't think you heard anyone say that we're currently looking at other places because we've done that for the last couple of years.
Right.
So let me finish, I respectfully listen to you, sir. So one of the things I think is very important to realize is if another parcel of land became available and the city wanted to do a land swap, the city could do that, okay? It's probably not feasible. Well, land swap could be even, right? It could be 1 for 1.
You got this land for cheap money. You know it and I know it.
Well, just hold on 1 second, sir, because I want to make sure you understand some of the things that you said were false about the Army Corps of Engineers. And Mr. Toddy reviewed that.
So, yeah, I'd like to speak to that. I keep hearing about this Army Corps of Engineers report, and if somebody has it, anyone in the community, if you could put that in my hand, I would love to read it. I'm sure that our friends at Time and Bond would love to read it as well. So, I'm not a civil engineer, but I did spend 6 years of my life serving in the Army Corps of Engineers, so I know a little bit about what they do. The Army Corps of Engineers wouldn't come out to a piece of property and say, this is unbuildable. This is not what they do. This is not within their wheelhouse. The only reason the Army Corps of Engineers may become involved with a project in the city of Rochester is, you heard us talk about standard dredge and fill permits that we would apply for as we approach doing anything near wetlands. There are threshold values. If you trigger a threshold value where I'm gonna fill, is it 60,000 square feet?
Well, it's more than an acre, is when you get into the big.
80,000 square feet, if I'm gonna fill more than 80,000 square feet of wetland, that would trigger Corps of Engineers involvement. Corps of Engineers would then look at a proposed project and say, yes, no, you can't do that, or what would probably happen is they would spend 10 years in the permitting process, and all the people that wanted to fill 80,000 square feet of wetland will have died of old age before the Corps of Engineers ever even responded to them. But you're saying there was a project that only involved 12 dry acres, and yet somehow the Corps of Engineers was involved. That, I don't see how that makes sense. So I reached out to the State Department of Environmental Services and said, can you please provide all your paperwork with regard to dredge and fill permits on this location? Is there ever been anything that would trigger Corps of Engineers involvement? Their answer was no, we don't have any such record. So we keep hearing about this Corps of Engineers report. I've tried to find it. If you have it, I would love for you to get me a copy of it, because the state doesn't seem to have it.
And in fairness, the other thing is that there may very well have been a previous proposal on the site to do something, right? And they may have had an informal consultation with the Corps of Engineers and New Hampshire DES to say, this is what, I mean, typically you do a pre-application review with these folks so that you can explain to them what you want to do and see if it makes any sense to them. And if the answer was from the Corps or anybody else, EPA gets involved in some of these things, DES certainly is intimately involved. If you have that discussion and they say, you know what, there's no way, then, you know, you pack up your stuff and you go away. Or you come up with a different plan, right? I mean, so that's, that may be what you're referring to, but there were, as Dave said, there's nothing in the DES records that indicates that a previous application was
So
made.
I just want to touch base on the other piece about being stuck behind a school bus. Is there anyone here that's never been stuck behind a school bus? Wherever you build a school, like we have a certain amount of kids in the city of Rochester, we have a certain amount of kids that take a bus. Whether that school's here, there, or somewhere else, those are the number of kids that are going to be on buses. In fact, if you were stuck behind a school bus on Salmon Falls Road, one of the comments we heard earlier was there's no kids on Salmon Falls Road. Well, why would you stuck behind a school bus? There must be. That seems to be a good thing. There's to be served in the area.
Two brand new developments, you said you walked everywhere, right? So
Yeah.
you know there's two developments on Salmon Falls Road, right?
Yeah.
Meadow Court and the one beside that, there's kids there.
Yeah, okay.
There's kids are dropping off,
They-
right,
It's a high school bus.
right.
Well, actually, there's middle school kids in our
Yeah.
neighborhood. I don't know, I think there are elementary kids in
Yeah.
the neighborhood as well.
Yeah, the kids
I've
are
seen
going
them
small.
walking around, they look elementary
And I was
size.
talking about kids. Down.
Yes, I just want to say, I live on Brock Street. There are two schools on Brock Street. And it is it's a downtown city street, but they travel very fast on that street. It is like a racetrack on the weekends. I mean, a motorcycle went by yesterday, I was really annoyed. But I try not to go from my house or to my house during pickup and drop-off times for schools, because there's middle school and there's McClellan School, probably that's probably our largest. You know, and parents don't let kids walk. There are sidewalks. They do walk from the Cold Spring Park to McClelland or middle school, but mostly parents drive kids nowadays to school. They just don't allow them to walk. It's not safe anymore for your kid to walk a city street. So wherever we put a school, we're going to have traffic. And if it's a big school, which we need to replace all of the spaces we're having to put into retirement, and the issue with building, I've been on the school board a long time. I've been looking at plans and talking about schools and spaces for a very long time. No one has called me. No one. Or I could tell you, these discussions do go on. This isn't done lightly or quickly. We were begging people, if you got land, please let us know. Finding a dry piece of land in Rochester is very difficult. But we do need to provide an education for our students. And the one, I have two or three, one just left. I have 2 grandchildren at the Nancy Loud School. I love that school, but I'm scared to death. That building needs so much care and money put into it in order for it to be safe. I would not be surprised to wake up any day now and hear we can't be in that building anymore, especially after rainstorms like we had last night. I don't not feel for your issues, and I see the issues we're going to have to deal with. They may be expensive issues to deal with water. But we have been looking for 2.5 years and longer, and Mike Hopkins had this study done where we looked at each of our buildings to see what they could do. What could you do at Chamberlain? It's not safe enough at Chamberlain to build up. That building's old. So we have a lot of old buildings that we're taking very good care of. You know, we hear from Mr. Toddy at building every month about, I've learned an awful lot about mortar and bricks. I mean, it's like, you know, there's a lot that goes into the care of these buildings. They're not inexpensive to take care of. But we do have to look towards the future. We have to look 5 years, 10 years down the road. And when you look at what the planning department has approved for building in this city, they didn't come to us and said, oh, by the way, you're going to need more schools. We were looking at what they were doing and saying, oh, this is scary. This looks like we're going to need more schools. When you build 3-bedroom condos, you're not going to have no kids. I'm sorry. And a bunch of those are approved right across the street from us on Brock Street. Huge development going in down on the end of Brock Street. So I get the traffic issue. I'm all for putting in whatever we need to on that road to slow them down. It sounds to me like the seniors in Tara need somebody to start looking out for them and put in some traffic mitigation over there. I've been going to Oyster River High School all weekend to dance recitals, and they've got these gosh darn speed platforms that I try to remember where they are. Maybe we need to put a few of those in. You know, there are other issues that need taken care of on that road, that this may just spur the city into looking at this road more seriously,
Well,
so.
they just dropped the speed limit on Salmon Falls down to 25. How far down does that go?
Well, it starts at 30 at the corner, and then it goes to 25.
To praise.
See how many people travel 25 there?
I'm not debating whether, sign doesn't slow them down, I'm just saying, it recently dropped down to 25.
Yeah, for sure.
So you could actually,
25.
before they just passed the downtown speed limit decrease, you could actually drive faster downtown than you could on St. Falls Road, which is,
Short stretch. Yeah,
so it needs to be expanded.
exactly. It
Okay.
should be the same as on the other side of Portland Street intersection.
I thought.
Isn't it a secondary highway, Salmon Falls Road?
Yes, it
Because, and it's actually an alternate route to 108 for a lot of people. I mean, it's a quicker drive to Dover, because you can take Haven Hill Road over to 108. It's a shortcut for so many people. I'm sure that's why it has so much traffic. And that, from this report, it says 7,000 vehicles on an average. That was in 2009, so I can only imagine what it is now.
But that's another, you bring up Haven Hill Road, that was a consideration because of the bridge. We can't have buses cross Haven Hill Road.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so, and Kyle, you can just kind of explain this. The district has to be separated east to west, not north to south. So our school district, and a lot has to do with the Haven Hill bridge. We can't put buses under it.
Just something else that hasn't been mentioned is permeability. The 12 acres comes out to roughly 500,000 square feet. As architects, how much of your building, your paving, your roads is actually going to be hard surface? And so that of that 500,000 square feet, even though it's supposedly dry land, water can't perk in, all that is going to be runoff to everybody, all the other neighbors' land. So that you're creating more and more unpermeable, whatever the word is.
Can I speak to that just for a second? It's not gonna be runoff to all the other neighbors' land, because water's gonna go down, right? We already talked about the low point of the parcel is the southwest corner. The water's going into the wetland. So any hard surface is draining through a stormwater mitigation system into a wetland. It's not turning around going back up. Does that make sense?
Are you making a lake? Are you making a lake back there? Because that's what's going to happen.
No, the regulations require that we not increase the rate of flow. So you have a calculated, permeability, as she indicated, and you have an amount of impervious surface, and you have a responsibility to treat a certain amount of that for stormwater, particulate removal and pollution removal. And also, you have an obligation not to increase peak runoff from your site. So, that's what the systems are designed for. And there are a number of different ways that we can do that depending on what the soils are like. If the soils are what we call C and D soils, which are poorly drained, not poorly drained, but relatively poorly drained, then you have, it might point you in a different direction because you can't do a lot of infiltration. You have to store the water and meter it out after a storm event so that you're not increasing that peak rate of flow. So and then dealing with groundwater is a different thing. So as I said, we may wind up with a system of underdrains, particularly adjacent to the building, that carry water that would otherwise flow under the building around the building, so that you don't have that
What do
issue.
you do with it?
You put it
out
into
to the
your
river?
stormwater system. It's
So
all,
out to the river? Is that what you channel it somehow, so it's?
it all goes, it all goes into a conveyance system. So it may be a combination of swales and infiltration chambers and, like gravel layers that will allow the water to percolate in. And the idea is that you store the water and release it gradually, either into the groundwater, sort of from whence it came, or into the wetland areas.
So,
As a calculated, it's a calculated thing, and we have stormwater, we have storm, you have 2, 5, 10, 25, 50, and 100-year storms, which are not really 100-year storms. It's a 1% storm, and you're responsible for, state regulations tell you what you need to design to, and that's what we do, along with pollutant removal. So that's another sort of new wrinkle to things. So we like to do sand filters and filter the water before it goes into the stormwater system, so that you remove the bad materials, the non-point source pollution, and then discharge it into relatively clean water into basically the same place that it's going now, but metering the flow so that you don't have the issue of flooding people out.
Just something on a totally different subject. When you were talking about the not having gas out there, have you looked at geothermal for heating and cooling of the building?
I would love to. We don't have an MEP, mechanical, electrical, plumbing, design contractor picked yet. That's something Dan will work with us on getting someone to do the MEP design. I would love to look at.
Yeah, we're looking at that at the county.
Yeah, sure.
Within a nursing home.
All of our schools right now are connected to natural gas. So and I've already reached out to talk about the possibility of extending the pipeline down Salmon Falls to serve the school, and they could pick up other additional customers anywhere that don't Salmon
Where does the
Falls.
pipeline go currently?
It's not far off of Portland Street, it stops. Now, I'm sorry, I don't remember exactly
Okay.
where it stops, but
It's a
we've
long
already
way.
begun those conversations, and if it's at all possible to extend natural gas, we would, but we any kind of renewable aspect that we could put into the school, and would also be looking at federal grant dollars to offset any of those costs, because I think especially with geothermal, we could be looking at some significant federal dollars to bolster that project. That's something I'm definitely going to have my eyes all over, just
Good.
geothermal.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Maybe what we could do is ask some of our experts here that you've heard some concerns, and what are some of the things that you will bring back to our next public forum, so that these folks can be prepared for some of the things that you may be having to share in the future.
Well, I can start. We've heard about significant concerns with traffic. We've heard significant concerns with sort of the topography and soils and wetlands. We should have a lot of that information, not necessarily the traffic piece, but a lot of the physical parts of the site should be pretty well understood within the next month. And then we'll need to do some work with like the physical planning of the school to sort of see what kind of options we might have with the site. So I don't know, when's the next meeting?
Next month, so the end of July.
So we may have some preliminary thoughts on building configurations, and we'll at least have a start on understanding the traffic, but I think that the traffic's going to be a little, the data collection piece of the traffic is something that we need to focus on, and that takes some time. And the wetlands, we should have well under control, and the boundary, the site boundaries and so forth. I mean, so I know it's kind of unsatisfying to hear that we don't have a lot of answers at this point, but we're furiously gathering information, and we are trying to, it's very helpful to hear from you all who would be potentially impacted by this, you know, what your specific concerns are.
Yeah, so I think that is the benefit of tonight. The plans are not fully cooked, so that's why we wanted to start this discussion early, so that we can all hear the challenges of the site and try to address them and find solutions to those challenges. So now that we've had that, we have held off on doing our building design because we're working on our program. So now we have a accepted program for all the spaces in that 66,000 square feet school. So we'll take the two options that we currently have on the site plan and we'll start architecturally laying those options out. So that will be at the next forum, as well as an update on a lot of the things that were talked about tonight.
Yes, ma'am?
When will a site plan application be submitted to the planning department?
That actually is a wrinkle in the state law. And while we are going to be intensively engaging with the planning department, the engineering department, and public works, and you know anybody else who has normal jurisdiction over a site like this project as a governmental use is not required to get site plan approval per se. So we won't be making an application to the planning board for site plan approval.
So, I'm sorry, so it's going to skip the technical review group?
No. That's my point, is that we plan on engaging very actively with city departments and the technical review.
So that would require an application to be submitted?
It doesn't. It's a review process that is specified by the state law. So we plan on following the regulations of the city. We plan on actively engaging with all of the appropriate departments and the technical review folks.
When will you do that?
I'm guessing it's at least 3 months out from now.
Okay, because I mean, that process usually is helpful in developing a project and moving it forward with the city. So, you know, to start that process earlier would be beneficial.
I've already had some preliminary conversations with the planning department. I've known those folks for many years, actually. So, as I said, we will be actively engaging the city's departments in not just a, well, here it is, what do you think, kind of way, but in a collaborative and a collaborative way.
And it's not just planning, we'll be looking at the fire department, police department.
I'm sorry, that process, when you submit a site plan application, usually with the city, it involves all of the departments throughout the city.
Right.
So it allows for all of those groups to come together and to discuss the project.
Right. That's the process we're planning on going through.
Okay.
But it won't be as a part of a formal site plan application. It's a city project.
No, I understand what you're saying in that regard, but the expertise that comes along with that is something that I would like to see.
Yep,
and I believe that the city council also spoke to that they wanted to see it to go through this process.
Absolutely.
Will it also be going to the Conservation Commission?
It will, in terms of if we have a wetland permit application, it definitely will be going to the Conservation Commission.
Okay.
My understanding is the city has an ordinance, not the state law, we understand that, as an ordinance that all city projects would go to a full review of the planning board, but not for a vote, We
Right.
understand that.
Right. mean, that's-
but you know, it's nice for you to go up in the planning department and talk with them, and go over to the fire department and talk with them and all that. But that isn't information that all of us have access to, and we don't hear those discussions. We don't hear any of that
That's
stuff.
part of why we're having these discussions.
Well, good, bring the fire department in, bring the planning department in. We'd like to hear what they have to say.
The planning department hasn't been consulted.
So, I mean, you're sitting up in their office is not very valuable to most of us citizens here. Frankly.
So let me do one thing to show everyone where this is gonna be located, so if I can kick Mr. Toddy off the.
Oh, we're at the school on the hill.
So if you go to rochesterschools.com, which is our website right here, tonight's presentation, you just click on menu, you come down to documents, it says new elementary school, and the entire presentation is right here, okay? Yes.
I just want to say, Mr. Superintendent, Mr. Toddy, Mr. Mayor, I know you take a lot of abuse from the citizens, and thank you for handling it with grace and having answers to our questions. You're very well prepared, and I'm certain there's a lot of things that you do that we don't know you do, and you put a lot of effort into a design and a building like this. It takes a lot of coordination, a lot of people. So thank you, Mr. Superintendent, Mr. Toddy, and Mr. Mayor for taking the abuse that you do and keeping at it.
Sounds like a great place to end tonight.
That's right.